and to recognize those who have suffered from workplace injury in an accident or disease. If you are out for a walk on April 28th, please bring a flower from your garden and lay it on your workers' memorial plaque in Spirit Square in Seashore, outside of Seaside Center, or Dugo Park in Gibsons by the tennis court. The 2021 Day of Mourning virtual service, the ceremony will be available at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday at dayofmourning.bc and .ca. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayuki. Appreciate your presentation. Is Donna going to say anything, or I saw her? We do have a letter in our package that Donna Thomas sent in. I encourage council to read that. It relates to the history of the plaque and in the Dugal Park, and very important. So I will encourage our staff and council to participate, to go out on the 28th of April, to go by. I've been there previously, and there's often staff who are stopping by there. And please, also, we will encourage our staff to take time during the day to stop in there, and also to observe a 1 minute of silence at 11 a.m. on April the 28th, which is the appropriate time to do that. So thank you very much for that. We do have a proclamation, which I will read. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, William Beamish, in recognition of National Day of Mourning. Whereas April 28th is observed across Canada and in countries around the world as a National Day of Mourning for workers killed, injured, disabled, or suffer disease as a result of work. And whereas thanks to the commitment and dedication of those who fight for improved workplace health and safety every day, advances have been made that make British Columbia a safer place to work. However, despite this progress, too many people continue to lose their lives or suffer an injury or illness as a result of their job. And whereas every worker has a right to return home safe and sound at the end of each day, and whereas April 28th of this year, each year, is a day to mourn and remember all workers who have been stricken with illness, injured, or have lost their lives in the job, a day to remember children left without parents and families facing hardship, including family and friends who nurse or care for ill and injured workers, a day to renew approaches to government for tougher occupational health and safety standards and effective compensation, a day to rededicate ourselves to the goal of making Canada's workplaces safer. And whereas by working together with employers, workers, and health and safety partners, we can prevent injuries and death to workers before they occur. Now, therefore, I, William Beamish, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2021 as National Day of Mourning in the town of Gibsons, and encourage all citizens to observe this National Day of Mourning in recognition of workers killed, injured, disabled, or suffer disease on the job. Proclamation 2021-03, April 2021, signed Mayor Beamish. And I really do encourage you, if you haven't visited the memorial, it's just south of the gazebo there, and almost below the tennis courts. And take time with your families to visit it, and just be aware of where it is, and take time to remember. And it's especially pungent in this year of COVID, where we are taking time to protect workers and people who come into our workplace. It's very important that we do that, and we remember why we're doing it. So thank you, Miyuki. Thank you, Donna Thomas. Thank you for all who have put this together. And we will invite our employees to take time to visit the site during the day on April the 28th. Thank you very much. And we'll send you a copy. We'll send you a copy of the proclamation, Miyuki.
Thank you very much, councils.
Thank you. Okay, moving on the agenda. We have inquiries. First inquiry session deals with items that are on the agenda tonight for discussion, and remind everybody it is a 10-minute time frame, and we have got to be quite conscious of that given the limited time we have available each night. We have 20 minutes of inquiry. So I have 7-Eleven, but either get a copy or have inquiries.
I would invite anyone who has a comment or a question to please raise your hand. No hands are raised, Mayor Beamish.
Thank you very much. We'll carry on the agenda. Committee of the whole meeting for April 6, 2021. Could I have a resolution to receive all minutes, reports, correspondence, bylaws that are on the agenda tonight? Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we'll go to 7.1.2, development permit application review process, rescheduling the workshop. The council workshop on application be scheduled for April 27, 2021 at 3 p.m. This comes out of committee, so council will have to resolve this. Motion to resolve the meet next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Councillor Kroll and Councillor Ludwig, thank you. And are we all able to make it? It's very important that we all be present at the meeting. This is a workshop, it's not a public meeting. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Tree preservation bylaw review. Couple things about this resolution here, and that is the staff did identify several things that they felt were somewhat of priorities to amend the bylaw process to make it better. Notwithstanding, there are some big issues that need to be looked at, but I wonder if council would be prepared to consider some of those minor amendments. And I'm going to look for the Director of Infrastructure. I don't see him here. If he wanted to speak to that, but I spoke to him earlier today. He said there, in the report that he submitted. Oh, there he is, right there. How did I miss that? Yeah,
I'm incognito.
Dave, did you have some specific items you wanted the council to consider?
Although we do have them, I don't have a listing of them ready at hand. However, we've been tracking them, and some of it is just editorial changes. Some are some suggestions from staff where we feel that the administration of it could be a little bit more easy to follow, I suppose. And nothing that we're suggesting would be an increase in enforcement or extent of the bylaw. But it definitely would, it would be nice to get some of the things out of the way while the discussion is going on at committee. We would bring a bylaw with, or we would propose to bring a bylaw with those edits. And we feel that we can do that for the next council meeting, first Tuesday in May.
Okay. Well, if council is comfortable with that, I mean, right now it's status quo, but we'll bring something forward. And then the second part of that is we want to appoint a select committee to be formed to review the bylaw 1282. We need to know from council who wants to be on that committee and then how large a committee so that we can advertise for that. So is there, and welcome Evie, I see you there. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. So that in terms of forming a select committee, we have to have a member of council has to be on the select committee of council. And so that is council, anybody want to volunteer to do that for the tree bylaw select committee? Councilor Dindrad, thank you. So what we'll do, we'll need to go out and advertise for that. And, I don't know how many members we want. Maybe we determine that by the number who respond. Is that a good way to look at it, to see who responds and say, hey, it'd be good to have this person, and that, hey, this sounds great and they bring value to the committee, and maybe we can determine it from there. So if council is comfortable with that. So that being said, we have these two resolutions. The tree preservation bylaw remain in place for the time being, and the select committee be formed to review the bylaw And Councillor Lumley, you move those. Councillor Kroll, and that I'm going to add to the select committee that Councillor Diendrad be a member of the select committee or council, representing council. We understand that. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Diendrad, for that. The United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. There's a recommendation from council. It's a fairly large one. Oh, no, it's not that large, actually. That the recommendation is the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People be adopted and implemented as recommended in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada Calls to Action Report, and pledge to use it as a framework for Indigenous reconciliation, and that a policy reflecting council's goals and objectives for the implementation of UNDRIP be brought to council for consideration. Somebody care to move that? Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Lumley, thank you. All in favor? Or further discussion? No, all in favor. Thank you. We got that. Proposed naming of streets, parks, and public facilities. What on this one here, Mr. Newman brought to my attention today that there is a Fisher Road in Area F. And in terms of not wanting to confuse our 911 operators or the police or fire response, it was thought that we should actually change this to Celia Crescent and not Fisher Crescent. And, you know, in thinking about it, those of you who may have known Celia Fisher, she would want to be addressed by her first name. And I think this would be honor her differently than we have honored many people in the community. People will still know who Celia Fisher is. So if council is agreeable to amend this resolution, then the first part of this is the proposed draft naming of streets, parks, and public facilities policy be adopted with amendments to Schedule B, and that the road name for the new road in Parkland be named Celia Crescent in recognition of Celia Fisher. Council move that. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Second by Councillor Diendrad. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, sir. I think you and I also discussed the Fisher Road in Grantham's Landing. And at that time, we discussed the possibility, which would need to be taken to the regional district, but one of Celia's big projects was the recreation center and her commitment to the facility and the support of community engagement in one thing and another. And I would like that a request be taken to the regional district with respect to the rec center in this community, that it also be renamed.
Somebody second that? Discuss it further. I'll second it for discussion. Would anybody have any strong feelings about that? And Councillor Lumley?
We're deciding if we're gonna rename something right now, or?
No, we're going to decide if we want to request that the regional district rename something.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Newman?
I know it's only just being resolved, but you now have a new streets, parks, and public facilities policy just adopted. And I'm wondering if the timing of this might be better after discussions with the Squamish. I'm just floating that for your consideration.
Appreciate that. Good comment. Yeah. Councillor Kroll?
I would certainly concede to acting CAO Newman's advice that I'm just proposing this as something down the road, that it doesn't have to happen tomorrow.
So do you want to withdraw the resolution and at this time?
Or amend it to include our ongoing conversations with First Nations?
Yeah. Well, that's possible, or amend it just to relate to our policy. Yeah. perhaps it's premature that we approach a regional district with an idea that we're not quite fully there yet on.
Okay, we had so I guess the simplest thing at this point would be to defeat the motion and just,
Or withdraw the motion.
okay, I'll withdraw it and reserve the right to bring it back when we're at a more appropriate time.
And I'll agree to that in a seconder. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, the 7.2 Committee of the Whole meeting, April 2021, development permit form of character for a studio suite conversion at 594 Shaw Road. This was discussed today at the Committee of the Whole, and the recommendation that council issue a development permit DP 2021-05 for the form and character of the garden suite conversion at 594 Shaw Road. Somebody like to move that? Councillor Kroll, second by Councillor D'Andrade. All in favor? Thank you. Advisory Design Panel appointments. Recommendation that Councillor Kroll be appointed as chair to the Advisory Design Panel, and that Michael Mills be appointed as vice chair to the Advisory Design Panel. Mr. Kroll, will you accept that appointment as chair?
I will, sir.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Ludwig, second by Councillor Lumley. All in favor? Thank you. And congratulations, Councillor Kroll. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'd also just like to say, if I may, at this time, that we had our first meeting with the panel, and I think we've got a really great selection of people that are bringing a lot of value to decision making and advice, and I really look forward to working with them. It was a really encouraging first meeting.
Good. Wildlife Attractant Bylaw 1294. This is 7.2.3. This was also discussed this afternoon at the committee meeting, and it was forwarded to this agenda for tonight. And recommendation of the Wildlife Attractant Bylaw 1294/2021 be forwarded to council for first reading. The garbage and organics collection and disposal amendment bylaw number 1252/04/2021 be forwarded to council for first reading. The bylaw enforcement notice bylaw number 1125/12/2021, this is also an amendment bylaw, sorry, be forwarded to council first reading. And the council provide opportunity for public input on these bylaws, and further that there be further report to council regarding this public input before proceeding to second or third reading of these bylaws. Council recalls the discussion this afternoon. Is it moved by Councillor D'Andrade? Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Thank you. Is there any further discussion council like to have? Councillor Kroll?
I just wanted to once again thank staff for, in the water notice that came out with the water bill today, there is help protect our bears, and there's some good, simple, straightforward, clear advice on, addressing the issues. I think in our correspondence, there was a letter from the Conservation Authority, or reflecting what the conservation officer does with bears who are attracted into the community. So anything we can do to save them is certainly appreciated.
Yeah. I was talking to a person this weekend who reminded me that conservation officers are not our exterminators, so that they are here to actually protect wildlife, yet they're often called to do otherwise in communities. And we need to kind of respect their role in our community, and we need to work with them to protect the wildlife and to prevent situations occurring where there has to be extermination. So, okay, we're going to go on to administration reports now, and there's a couple of those here. There's two actually. The third one is more of an informational item, and first one is from the Acting Chief Administrative Officer. It is a Strengthening Community Services grant, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I believe consultant is in the audience if you have any questions in regards to this grant application. But this is gone in. It was submitted on the 16th, which was the deadline for the grant application. And as per most grants we apply for, it requires a resolution of council. And broadly speaking, this grant is to address homelessness in the town with some specific listed activities. And as I say, I believe Silas White is in the audience, and so could speak further to this if you wish.
Yeah, please. Silas, perhaps you could unmute yourself and speak to the application that's been submitted.
Yeah, it's the acting CAO did a sufficient job for sure in summarizing it. It's in the report. Made sure to include in the report what the criteria for this grant is. So it's very, very focused on homelessness. So there's kind of a 3-part application that the town has put together. One is to really focus on making sure the shelter is open on time in the coming year, which it has never. It's always a pretty loose, ad hoc, community-driven process to open the shelter and get the funding from BC Housing and get the venue and get the operator. So this would be a real shift this year to actually pay for help to make sure that happens. And then also within that role, there would be further consulting work in terms of emergency housing recommendations from the Housing Needs Report. Then there is a destigmatization program proposed as well, largely around working with the community and integrating the new residents from supportive housing and other homeless individuals into the community, and really also focusing on community connections and public safety within that role. And thirdly, outreach support. We can really use some more outreach support in the town, particularly during COVID. And as COVID ends, the Gibson shelter itself had just in April, it was only open for 2 weeks in April. It closed down last week, and eight new individuals had filled out applications for supportive housing. After it's already full. At that time, that was eight new individuals appeared at the shelter in need of housing, and we're aware of, even in that same period, aware of about 6 more on the Sunshine Coast, mostly seniors. All seniors, actually. Those 6 were all seniors in need of housing. So there's a desperate need for an outreach position as well at this time, and it does make sense to have it for a period of time, a year, because COVID is really COVID's had a few unexpected effects. I mean, one is certainly the housing boom as well here, which as I know this council has talked a lot about, where people have bought homes where long-term rentals have been displaced, and people have found themselves without a home.
Thank you, Silas. Last night we had a housing committee meeting. Councillor Crowell attended that as well. And certainly this initiative is very consistent with the Sunshine Coast Emergency Housing call to action that we endorsed at our last meeting. I believe it was the last meeting, maybe the time before that. It's been adopted by council, been adopted by the regional district and Seashell. Seashell has also put in an application. There'll be some dovetailing of these, and some they will support each other in terms of the activities on the coast and provide more resources. It is always a frustration to have to fight for a shelter in November when the weather is turning bad. And we sit and we look at it and from the privacy of our homes and realize that nothing is in place. And it started quite late this year as well. So it'd be nice to be able to anticipate that and look and see what can be done in terms of future shelter. So the recommendation here that is it requires a resolution of council to support the application, which was submitted last week on Friday to meet the deadline, with the understanding that a resolution will be coming. If we don't resolve it, it would stop its progress. That's all. But the recommendations are there that the council has endorsed the activities proposed by the town of Gibsons, the UBCM Strengthening Community Services Program, and the council supports the town of Gibsons to apply for, receive, and manage the Strengthening Service grant funding. We will determine how that's going to be done if and when we get the grant itself. So moved by Councillor Kroll, did I see that? Seconded by Councillor Diandrad, thank you. Yeah, so any further discussion on that, Council? Councillor Kroll?
Just very briefly, a follow-up to your comments about the meeting last night with the Housing Committee. And I've been working on another committee to look at how we can address some of the issues. But just recently, I received some information that between June of last year and March of this year, there have been 41 people have been evicted. Now, that's not just Gibsons, that's the coast. But of those 41, 23 were seniors over 65. And a lot of these people have absolutely, we all know what the rental situation is like on the coast. And, 41 people, that's another shelter full. So I think it's timely. It's, we sort of have the feeling we're dancing as fast as we can and not making a lot of progress, but it's, so I certainly support this initiative.
You see no further speakers. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. And to the corporate officer, if you can ensure that a copy of that resolution goes to Mr. White appropriately, who will submit it. I assume, Silas, that's appropriate, or did you want somebody else to submit it?
Yeah, I'm in touch with UBCM, so I'll be working with the corporate officer too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next report is the Town of Gibson's financial statement for December 31, 2020. And Director of Finance, I invite you to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'm going to share my screen for a short presentation. Okay, let me know when you can see that.
Yes, you can see it. Can you go full screen, or that you just got part screen
Hang on. That's about as good as I can go. Is that good?
That's
Okay.
yeah.
So this is the 2020 draft audited financial statement. So as you know, most of the time this time of year, the focus has been on the budget for 2021, but staff have also been working on the financial reporting requirements for 2020. And so the community charter outlines that the annual financial statements are the responsibility of the financial officer and are being presented here today for council's approval. So I've got a copy of the statements has been provided in the agenda package. You could see that there. And then as required, these statements have been audited by BDO Canada and include the independent auditor's report, which expresses a clean audit opinion. So as part of the presentation tonight, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the financial position statement of operations. I'll touch on the cumulative surplus. I'll talk about a few of the notes, and then I'll just provide some concluding comments for you. So the first one is the statement of financial position. And so this statement starts off with a listing of the town's financial assets. And you can see there, it's mainly cash and investments, portfolio investments. The taxes and accounts receivable, both of those have gone down slightly as compared to last year. But you see that we saw an increase in both the cash of 2 million and the investments of just about 4.5 million balances as compared to last year. And the cash, that reflects a year-end draw in preparation to have sufficient funds for us to make our 2020 annual school tax remittance, and that was due in early January this year. And I'll talk a bit about that change in just a minute. The investment balance reflects the 1.5 million COVID grant we received. And also I did a draw for funds, a draw on the two debt issues that we have for the Prowse Road lift station and the Zone 3 to replenish our accounts for funds that we've spent on these projects to date. So overall, the financial assets have increased by about 5.4 million, and now we're looking at just over $13.4 million in financial assets. And this again is as at December 31st of 2020. And so next up is the section of liabilities, and this is our obligations to creditors. And so our total obligations are just over 15.5 million. And this is an increase of 5.5 million as compared to last year. And so the increase, you can see accounts payable increased by about 2.5 million, and the bulk of that relates to the year-end school tax remittance. And so in response to the pandemic, the potential adverse effects of the pandemic, the province, as you may remember this year, or in 2020, they deferred the payment of the school tax remittance for local governments until January of 2021. And the goal for that was to assist us with cash flow, because we weren't really sure at that time what kind of cash flow impact the pandemic would have. It was just really evolving at the beginning of the tax season last year. And so normally in a normal year, and this is going to be back again this year, is we make installment payments throughout the year. And so our year-end balance would be much lower than it is. And so that's the bulk of that accounts payable. You can also see an increase in long-term debt of just over about 2.6 million. And this relates to the two big projects we have on the go, which is the Zone 3 aquifer expansion, as well as the Prowse Road lift station upgrade projects. And both of those are funded by debt. And then so you can see that our long-term debt is now sitting at just over 9.6 million. And this doesn't include some unissued debt. So we have portions of the debt associated with the lift station and the aquifer expansion that we still have to draw on. So that number is going to go up a bit further once we do draw those funds. The lift station, we have about $800,000 we can still draw on that debt. And then the aquifer expansion, about 1.1 million still. And that's basically that we haven't spent those funds yet, and that's expected in 2021. And so the result of the year-end financial assets, liabilities is a net debt of $2.1 million. And you can see that's a reduction of about $200,000 as compared to 2019. And in the net context of net debt, a reduction, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. So the third section is the non-financial assets, and we're still in a statement of financial position. And these are mainly capital assets, and overall has increased by $3.2 million. And the increase is really the result of a net addition of assets. And this is new and replacement assets that we've added on to the town's inventory, less the annual depreciation of our existing assets and any disposals that we had to do as a result of those additions and replacements. And so the bulk of the additions this year relate to the assets required to support the Zone 3 aquifer expansion, as well as the infrastructure related for the Prowse Road. Those two projects really show up in our statements this year because they were quite significant. So these three items, so financial assets, liabilities, and then the non-financial assets, result in an improved overall financial position for the town with an accumulated surplus of $57.6 million as compared to about 54.4 last year. And so next comes a statement of operations, and this is our revenues and expenses. So I'll start with revenue. And so overall, if we compare budget to actual, you can see that our 2020 actual revenue of 12.4 million is about 1.6 higher than amount budgeted. And the bulk of this relates to the 1.5 million COVID restart funding that received. That was recorded as revenue this year as opposed to deferred. And it's really because of the open parameters around that grant. It was there was a lot of discussion in the province about how to record that, and it was agreed across that it's recorded as revenue for the current year. So it's going to show a bit of a bump in all the statements across the province, across the country actually. In other areas, taxation and user fees came in at very close to budget, and then we had reduced sales of service, and that was offset by increase of their other revenues and contributions from developers. So next is on the statement of ops is the expenses section. So we have, in this case, we had the opposite effect with expenses, which is a pretty great combo. So with actual expenses coming in at $9.28 million, and that was about 800,000 lower than budgeted, so about at 92%. And expenses also overall were about 200,000 lower than 2019. And this really is attributed to during the pandemic, while we were able to continue essential services to the community, and we continue to do so because we're still in this pandemic, the areas that we would normally see expenses were significantly reduced. And the big ones that really stood out to me were the travel costs and training expenses, because those really were put on hold for the bulk of the year until the organizations either flipped to virtual options or really didn't be able to provide any training as well during the year. The other things were community events that were postponed, and we also had a couple of vacant positions throughout the year, but some of the projects that we had that were planned in the pandemic really made us put those on hold, and so that's why the drop in expenses on that side. And so this resulted in overall reduced expenses, like I said, not only compared to 2019 actuals, but also compared to the 2020 budget. And so the result of the increased revenue and the decreased expenses on the statement of operations is an annual surplus of $3.1 million. And that brings our total accumulated surplus up to the 57.6 million that I mentioned a bit earlier. And so our note 6 provides a bit more detail about the cumulative surplus. This is a big number, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time outlining this one. And so it's important to clarify that this surplus, that 57.6 million, is not all cash that we can spend. And you can see there that the bulk of it is the majority of that 50.1 million is relates to the town's investment in intangible capital assets, and that's really the municipal assets, the buildings, the roads, the pavement, all the water and sewer mains, the water treatment plant, all of those assets that we have that we use to provide services. And that 50,076,000 represents is a net book value of the assets. So that's just less any associated debt. We don't count that in that accounting exercise. And so the remaining surplus is a variety of reserves the town has. That's the two top lines there, the total operating and the reserve funds. And overall, in this area of those two combined, we saw an increase of about 2.8 million as compared to last year. And the majority of the increase, again, was the COVID Safe Restart funding. So we got, at year end, we have, as of December 31st, 2020, we had 1.2 million roughly of that's unspent. So that's now sitting in a reserve available for use. The general and the water surpluses have also increased. That's the general and water operations, about 400,000 and 200,000 respectively. The gas tax reserves up a little bit as well this year. We do tend to fluctuate in terms of that balance, in terms of how much work we do, and we're going to see a drawdown on that this year. So, but as of December 31st, it was up a little bit. The sewer and water both have a reserve for future expenditures accounts, and that's really for timing of projects, and they were both up this year. And really the effect of that is because of the funding that we had to set aside for projects that we couldn't do. And so many of those are going to be taking place this year. So we're going to see those drop down again in 2021. And so I want to finish up with a bit of comments on the notes. So the notes are an integral part of the financial statement. So, they have the four kind of statements at the very front, but then the notes are quite extensive. And I just want to touch on a few more aside from note 6, which was the accumulated surplus. So development cost charges, that's note number 5. And it shows a balance increase by about 100,000 as compared to last year. We're now sitting about 1.2 million for all of our development cost charges we have on balance. And this reflects that really in 2020, the expenditures were only slightly lower than the year's developer and increased interest contributions. The next one is I want to touch on is our commitments, and that's note 7. We outline the commitments, and this one includes information on the bulk water supply agreement that we have with the regional district. And I've also included a note in there that as of August 2020, that we no longer rely on the regional district to supply Zone 3 water. The next one, contractual rights, that's note 13 in the statements. And we're really outlining any material contractual rights that the town has. And I've listed 3 items in the statements. One is a pretty standard one. It's an obligation of developers to provide subdivision infrastructure, which then transfer to the town and we record them as assets. Another one that is in that section is the agreement that we have with the RCMP for the occupancy of the station at the Sunnycrest Road and the corresponding about 159,000 lease payment that we get from them as a part of that agreement. I've also included a note that which has been since this has been in place, that agreement is in place while we're below the 5,000 population. And so once that population changes, then that agreement is going to have to change as well. The third one that we have in there is the annual lease revenue that we receive as a result of the marina lease. And then just a couple more. So COVID-19 can't kind of really go a year, but through a pandemic and not mention this in financial statements. And so really it's a recognition that in 2020, the town was, and we still are operating in the midst of a pandemic and that uncertainty remains. So it's really a disclosure for that, but that we will continue to focus on providing essential services to citizens of the town. And the last one is we'll note it's about natural assets, and we include in our, it's a section called significant accounting policies, and we speak to the tangible capital assets, but we also add a note in there that we want to recognize the important role that natural assets play in increasing our resiliency to climate change, and the town's investment in this area. And we've done previously, as council's aware, some forest store restoration. This year we're working on some creek assessments and some monitoring, and we've been monitoring the aquifer for quite some time. And so the 2021 capital projects capital plan has several projects which will continue to further our progress in that area. So it's an important part of our operations, and I want to make sure I mention it in our financial statements each year. And so just want to conclude with confirming that the town's financial position continues to improve, and we're working towards long-term sustainability, sustainable service delivery, as well as increasing our resiliency to climate change. And so, as mentioned, the statements have been included in the agenda for council's approval, and the recommendation I'm requesting tonight is that the town of Gibsons draft audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020 be approved as presented, and they will become not drafted once they're approved, and then I go on with remitting them to the province. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you for the documentation in our agenda package. It was easy to follow as well along with you. So council, do you have any questions for the Director of Finance? It must have been good.
It's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One question I have is the gas tax. We have some indication we're going to get a doubling of that again this year, and I guess that's contingent upon the federal budget being passed. What would that amount be if we did receive that?
It's we get this year we get $260,000, so that would be a doubling of that. Yeah.
Another $260,000. Okay, and that has certain limited uses, but it still is valuable that we see that. And I think the federal government is also forward-looking and could be holding the communities accountable for spending that money. And I think that that program ends, if I'm not mistaken, in 2025. It was not renewed, but they are all asking that all those communities and regional areas that have large bank accounts made up of gas funding be accounted for.
Yeah, and council, remember in the budget process for the 2021 budget process, the Director of Infrastructure Services, the capital plan outlines some pretty significant funding for gas tax. We use it predominantly for road rehab, but we also have some other quite interesting projects it's going to be funding. And over the 5-year, we're basically depleting all of our gas tax, so we have no concerns there about getting in trouble for not spending it. So, and we can definitely adjust the scope to over the 5 years to make sure we spend that additional doubling if the government does end up providing that this year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And being no further questions, again, Director of Finance, thank you and your staff for making it clear to us and keeping us on the right side of the law with regards to our finances. And, we really appreciate that. So a motion to council draft audited financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2020 be approved as presented. Councillor Lumley, Councillor Crowell. Further discussion, council? All in favor? Thank you very much. It's nice to see we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you very much.
8.3, council, I think it was just a misunderstanding. That was intended to be a correspondence item, but we have received it. I don't know if council has any questions about it. It's a small grant opportunity. If you have any grant ideas that might fit that, we should discuss them perhaps with the corporate officer and see what might fit that those categories. There's a much larger grant opportunity for planning that I know that the director of planning is looking at, and I think that's what we thought Plan H might have been about, sort of thing. But it's a up to $500,000 for planning grants, which could be rewrite the OCP, rewrite zoning bylaws, do different things of that nature. So we'll be taking a hard look at that opportunity. And I know the director, I don't want to speak to the director of planning as to what might come forward, but it is being looked at this time. So, okay, council reports, opportunity for councilors to report. Please go ahead. Evie, I'm going to start with you. You, I'm sure, have lots to report. Thank you very much for being here. We don't see you very often. But next year we'll see you frequently.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So hi everyone. I just wanted, Gravity just wanted to let you guys know that the Sunshine Coast Youth Council is hoping to do a presentation at the upcoming intergovernmental meeting, and she'll be in touch with them. Yeah, that's all she wanted me to tell you guys today.
Yeah, I've been corresponding with Gravity on that. Gravity and Ailish, they have. I've got to confirm the date with them. I think it's the 4th of May. Has anybody got that in their calendar? I'll have to check on that anyway. But yeah, we'll let Gravity know and get back. And Evie, I hope you're going to attend that as well.
Yeah,
you'll enjoy that. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Other councilor reports? Councilor Ladwig.
Just very quickly, I attended a garden planting party at the Affordable Housing Society project on Franklin Road on Saturday. And I just wanted council to know, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but residents are moving in at the end of the month.
Great.
Very exciting. I got a sneak peek into the finished units and they're lovely. Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society has done a phenomenal job. I don't know if any of you guys have built your own home before, but if you have, it's very complicated, and to do that, as a nonprofit is pretty impressive. So, yeah, I just wanted to recognize their efforts. Longman Bellmans did a really great job of putting the project together, and everyone has, lots of people in the community have provided in-kind contributions or elements to the project. So it's been a real community effort. So yeah, so people are moving in at the end of the month. I think they're hoping to do some kind of COVID-friendly ribbon cutting, opportunity, but we'll see if they can manage that under the circumstances. But yeah, I just want everyone to know that it's progressed and they've hit their objective.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Councilor Diandrade.
Are we having an open house for I would love to see.
Yeah, well, and so I'm really encouraging them to. They've been conscious of the COVID situation, so they're working on it. There's so many people to thank that they feel, I think, a little bit awkward of making sure they have the right people there. So stay tuned. I'll let you know. But I'm hoping something small at least.
At least council.
Well, that's
us too.
I'm trying.
Councilor Crowell, did you have any report?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I referenced the first meeting of the Advisory Design Committee, and I just wanted to, thank staff for working with us and the members who came, who are giving up their time to sit on the committee. It was a really positive outcome. We had our first meeting, and I'd like to thank Leanne Johnson and Blake McLeod for working with me we're looking at how we can work to ensure that residents have safe rental accommodation, and what we can possibly do, to minimize evictions for, renovations or whatever. The other thing, I just more of a shout out than anything, the Sunshine Coast Quilters Group. I was quite overwhelmed when I discovered that they have provided 40 quilts for the beds of the residents of the supportive housing on School Road. And, I think it's an amazing statement of the acceptance of this unit in the community. And I just, I would really like them, to be acknowledged for the incredibly kind gesture of making the quilts and donating them. So that's about all I have to say for now.
Good, thank you. Not too much. I mean, other than regular regional district meetings, we had a conference call with Josie Osborne, our Minister of Municipal Affairs again, and conference calls on the COVID with the coastal health. They are regular activities that go on, and looking forward to tomorrow. I've got the Mayor's Forum, which is with the RCMP, and that's for the afternoon tomorrow, and then all day with the regional district again on Thursday. And so that whoever said this job was part-time, an hour a day or something, I'd like to talk to that person. I know Councillor Ladwig would like to talk to somebody too. So, yeah, so that it's so the many hours spent, the housing committee last night, there was 43 people out to that meeting, Zoom meeting. It was just great to talk to people. It's great to see people up and down the coast working together on a common issue, and very enthusiastically recognizing the need out there and the need to find solutions. So that I'm very hopeful that we will continue to be part of that. There was a committee appointed or elected actually last night. No politicians. It was agreed that it would be a non-political organization. However, I did recommend that one of the subcommittees should almost be a made up of government representatives, just to bounce ideas back and forth, so that there's that continued contact in there. So take a look at that. So, but it's been a busy time, and continues to be a busy time every day. So, but thankfully we can support each other through it, and that's important. So, correspondence. Going now to correspondence. Anything that council would like to bring forward from the correspondence lists of, we've got April 6th and April 12th, and they've been received. Is there anything the council wants to identify? Councilor Dindrad.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a letter regarding 5G technology. I don't know if but he's talking about the radiation emitted. Obviously, this is about concerns. There has been, according to him, there has been installation. There's 5G boxes on Gower Point, and he talks about, the amount of microwatts. But the point being is, in July last year, Council passed a resolution that Council be provided with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities preparing for 5G deployment guide. There was a correspondence that came here, and the federal government and I believe it was the Federation as well of Canadian Municipalities. It was at the federal level, but they were asking communities to get prepared for the deployment of 5G. And even if for example, there are planning concerns, right? Proper municipal oversight should help address the most obvious planning concerns. There's a lot of uncertainties, including safety. At the time, I remember the correspondence that they were talking about, that we should plan for that, because there are certain areas that we might not want the antennas. These antennas, they are small. Nobody will notice until they are affecting people. And nothing came back. It has been, almost a year. So I would like to bring this back, and we could form, well, the resolution was for staff and that a staff report be presented to council regarding other municipalities' response to 5G deployment in their communities. And there are even cities in other parts of the world that put a halt on 5G because they consider dangers. So I think it's something that the federal government asked municipalities to look at this. And even there's certain criteria of distance where you can put heights, depending where you are. And I think it's pretty important. It can impact kids even more than adults because they are not fully formed. And there could be, consequence that we cannot even anticipate what it is. So I would like to understand, first of all, probably staff is busy, but if we could act on that, because we need to act before, right, they install. We know nothing about it. At least I don't know. As a counselor, I have no idea what's happening. And I was surprised to see, I knew that Vancouver has already started, so I don't even know if what this person is saying is correct, but he's affirming here that there are new 5G boxes on Gower Point Road.
Do we know where on Gower Point Road were they identified? I didn't see a location identified. As Gower Point Road runs through the municipality, it's not exclusively in the municipality. So, we could certainly ask staff. I mean, I think we got overtaken. I suspect staff got overtaken by COVID this year, but corporate officer, well, maybe the director of planning. I don't know. I don't know what staff person can do research on 5G. I guess that's the question. Is there anybody that we have that can do research on 5G and present it to council knowingly, or do we go to our service provider in terms of our computer system because maybe they have a better understanding of what it all means? Dave, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I can't think of any staff member that would be appropriate to pass this on to. I'm wondering whether the province or the federal government already has, some literature or guidelines in regards to it. And certainly I could see possibly reaching out to our IT providers to see if they have any recommended correspondence is another possibility, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit out of, in a way, out of the municipal staff context.
I'm just Googling to see if there's anything at UBCM has anything on 5G.
Mayor Bibish, there is a document that was in our motion, which is actually, you can Google, get it right, preparing for 5G deployment in your municipality, is from FCM.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Perhaps if you've got that, Councilor Dindrad, you could resend it to councilors who will take a look at it and see, and then see if there's an action we can do on it. It's how much we can reasonably do with a non-informed, non-technical staff in a small municipality. We do rely on others, and that's going to be the big thing. Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I know at the regional district, anytime that TELUS are looking at upgrading service, it comes before I believe the Planning and Development Committee, and for any sort of tower approval, because we're going to be, I think it's something that almost needs to be dealt with a coast level if we're going to deal with it, because saying you can't have it in Gibsons, if there's 5G waves in the air, they're going to come across into the town, whether there are 5G boxes or the regional district one. So trying to deal with it at our level without the endorsement and support of the regional district, I think would be rather futile. So, and the regional district have staff who are perhaps already working on it because they're dealing with TELUS with all these tower applications.
Well, maybe we'll ask the regional district if they've been doing anything on 5G. I'll be there this week. I could ask the question under director's reports and then see if they have any, because they do have a much larger tech staff there. They have a tech staff. What am I saying? And so that perhaps they have information relative to some of the issues that they've dealt with. And probably a better way to us to do it on a regional basis. I agree with Councillor Kroll. Look at it and then see what is there. And maybe it's an intergovernmental thing. So, Councillor Dindrad, then Councillor Kroll.
Yeah, I think there are several levels. There's levels of logistics itself, where to install these towers. There's some guidelines in terms of place, heights, and things. And then there's also the health level, that we could even have a committee. I mean, one of the goals of an environmental committee is to look at that. We have great intellectual capital in this town, so it doesn't need to be everything falling to the government. Some citizens can also do some research, because this is something that there's civilian countries that put a halt, and cities, sorry, not full countries. Brussels is one. There's cities in other parts of the world that put a halt. I believe. Sorry, I forgot now some of the countries, because there is concern. So I think it's something that deserves attention, and I think we don't want to be just caught up by surprise. So I think we could do even a mixed model. I'll get some documentation to our corporate officer, and the motion that we passed as well. But the motion has been almost a year now.
Thank you. I'm just looking on, I just checked on the computer. It says, from small towns to metropolitan centers, Rogers 5G, powered by Ericsson, is British Columbia's largest 5G network and is now available in 51 towns and cities in the province. We are not on that list because I think we're covered more by TELUS over here, but it is being rolled out in many other places that are getting it. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, let's see what comes forward and see what we can look at. But I think the regional district is probably a good place to start with it as well. Thank you. I acknowledge in the correspondence received a very extensive petition on the tree bylaw, and that's something that the committee that we appoint, Councillor Dindrad, will be looking at. So there's a number of things in there on the tree bylaw, both supportive and opposed to. So it's something to bear in mind there. Yeah, if anybody has anything else they want to bring forward, and other than that, I would expect the staff would look through the operational issues and ensure that they are responded to appropriately in a timely way. So thank you. Okay, moving on to the agenda, we have a request for a letter of support for Community Resilience Investment Program application, and this is one from the Regional District. Excuse me. And on March 25th, we resolved the Regional District that Fire Smart Economic Recovery Fund application, the regional grant application, UBCM, Municipalities Resilience Investment Program to build local wildlife resilience and assist communities in recovering from the economic impacts of COVID be approved. And further, the request for letter of support be forwarded to the Sechelt Nation, Town of Gibsons, and District of Sechelt. So council wish to support this and resolve this. Councillor Dindrad, followed by Councillor Kroll, that we write a letter to the Regional District in support of their application. Okay. All in favor, thank you. I saw the voting going on before I asked. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll go down now to bylaws I think we're at. And we have another number of them. So the single-use plastic regulation bylaw. Now that's back in our books because, as you'll recall, it was set aside because of legislation and court cases that were going on. A number of communities now have been approved on this, and it's timely now that we put ours forward again and at least get it a third reading and then decide at what point in time we want to put it to implementation. When we initiated this in 2020, the idea at that time was that we would not simply drop it on the commercial sector, that we would give them an opportunity to plan for it. And the idea was that after the current business cycle was over and they're getting ready for the next one, which would be through the start of the next year, and they are ordering their supplies for the next one, that they would consider ordering paper instead of plastic. I am very pleased to see the number of people in the community who will obviously using their own bags, number of stores offering paper. Almost every store asks, do you need a bag? And I think that's a really good change in approach that people are taking. And people walk out with their purchases in their pockets or in their arms or in the bag that they provided, or if necessary, a bag that is provided by and paid for at the till. So I think the people are changing. I think our bylaw, it's time when we move our bylaw forward to the next step and I think we have to get it to third reading, and then we submit it to the minister for approval. And a number of communities now are moving in that direction and are receiving approval. And then we would look to say, okay, with we'll give it final adoption perhaps in the fall, looking forward to implementation in 2022. That would be my idea anyway. So any comments on that, Council? Councillor Crowell, Councillor Diendrad.
I don't know whether you noticed, sirs, Mr. White has had his hand up for some time.
I didn't notice that. I don't see his hand up now either. I'll go to Councillor Diendrad first then.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a kind of a clarification, because my understanding is plastic bags are not supposed to go to the landfill, right?
Not supposed to. No, they're supposed to be recycled.
To recycle. So my understanding is that the STRD will not receive, or they will still receive. I mean, I still support that.
They take the garbage bags, the plastic garbage bags, and I think that, Mr. White is also on the garbage committee. So, Silas, you want to comment?
Can I finish? No, because I would like to hear your comments too. So, on that note. So I mean, I think this is it's a great initiative, but I have concerns because there's an incredible, even when I know many restaurants, they decided to do, I'm very happy that some restaurants is just paper, but there's still restaurants, there's an incredible amount of plastic. If at this point there's anything we can do about it.
There is a ban. The SRD has been talking about a ban for a couple of years on recyclables and organics, but they are just making sure that there are alternatives in place for communities to organics, especially. The rollout for organics in the rural areas has just started, and not for Area A, so I don't know what they're going to do about that. But there has been plans to get a ban at the landfill for all recyclables, including plastic bags. I did put my hand up earlier because I helped with this bylaw when it first was introduced, and I see the version that you have on your agenda. I know this was proposed for the agenda, then got taken off, and it's back on again. It has, I know that council, I recall when we first looked at it, council had a motion to remove the word plastic from the title, because the idea is that other items would be added to this, such as styrofoam packaging and things over time. So so that appears twice actually in the bylaw in front of you. Number one, citation, and then at the very top in the title. And then of course the date is problematic. It talks about this being coming into effect. Yeah. So I think you would need to amend it now, rather than at adopt. You can't do it at adoption, so it would need to be at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should actually adopt it, amend it now before we give it second reading and third reading, so that this did go forward with the use of plastics in it, though. In last November 2019, it was given first reading with as written here. So I don't know. It was intended to focus on single-use plastic. Are we talking about single-use items? Councillor Lumley?
Doesn't single-use plastic just refer to the fact that the plastic that's not recyclable? Like, isn't that what single-use plastic is? Wouldn't that include any plastic that would not be recyclable?
You know, it's things like straws and coffee cup lids and smaller things. Councillor Ludwig?
I was just gonna say, it refers to things that are only intended to be used once. That's what single use is. So whereas a Tupperware container might be plastic and it is recyclable, but the intent is that it'd be used multiple times.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if plastic's okay because it's single-use plastic, right? There's multiple forms of plastic.
Basically,
Silas is right. We did have a conversation about whether or not we wanted to expand the title so that in the future, if we wanted to add other single-use container items made out of other other material could be added to the list, things like styrofoam and whatnot.
well, now's the time to amend it. If you want to take the word plastic out of the bylaw descriptor and the citation, now will be the time to do it. And we should change the date, and I think it should come into effect in January 1, 2022. And enforced in March 30, 2022 would be the logical push forward dates. Councilor Diendrad?
Thank you, Mayor. I remember, I mean, I support the item, but I remember there was a discussion about, for example, laundry business that they have to for security. So I don't remember where we ended up with this conversation, but I remember that could be, I don't know if there has to be a disclaimer here. But I think my question is, do we have the power to request that, for example, restaurants don't package with plastic? Is it something that do we have the jurisdiction to do that? Can we do?
Well, we do through this bylaw, if we choose to go that direction, yes, yeah. And that's why we give them lots of time to receive the information and prepare for it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Councillor Ludwig?
Yeah, I mean, I fully support this, whether we go forward with just a plastic title or some other title. I mean, at this point, I just like to see it move forward. So I'm not going to be a stickler on that. I'm just curious what our thoughts are on consultation. Like, I was just thinking myself, not that I think, I'm just curious how franchises, like say a franchise, are they required to use a plastic straw? And what does that?
And the difference is that A&W uses paper straws and Tim Hortons, Wendy's uses plastic straws. And
I know, but those things are dictated by their franchise. And so A&W as a franchise must have decided to use a paper straw, which is fabulous. I believe, I don't know, and this is why I'm wondering what our consultation is. I would assume that Wendy's and whatever Tim Hortons have decided as a franchise to use plastic, but maybe Silas knows more about this.
They can switch. 9 communities now have this bylaw, so
okay, good.
They've had to change in other communities.
So, Council, do you want to take the word plastic out of the references and amend it by taking the word plastic out in those 2 locations and just single-use items for businesses. Pretty hard to tell for me to go to a business and determine what their single-use item might be that we're not focusing on. That's part of the problem. The focus is on plastics. Stafford, how does that affect you?
I was just gonna say, toilet paper is a single-use item.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
does that mean people can't use toilet paper?
Yeah.
The items are very specific in the bylaw, and it would be up to council in the future to add items.
Yeah.
As you can see, there's right now you've got the checkout bags, the straws, and council. It would be to this, future councils to say, well, like right now I don't think. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but the styrofoam packaging is not in there quite yet. I know Vancouver has moved to that, so that might be kind of probably the next steps that a bylaw like this would take. But
I would like to make this as easy as possible to adopt at this point in time in the provinces.
Yeah.
So all I would suggest we do is, we went through this, we decided on this, and we gave it first reading. The dates are out. I think we need to amend the dates. I'd recommend the effective date, as I say, be 2022, January 1, 2022, and the enforced date be March 30, 2022. And I think that's, at this point in time, we can amend it into the future if we need to. Councillor Kroll?
I just wanted to second the amendment that you've proposed.
Okay, I will move that and you'll second that. Further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? No. Okay, so all in favor of giving second reading to the bylaw as amended? Or someone want to move the bylaw as amended? Sorry, Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor of giving second reading to the bylaw as amended? Okay. Okay, and we'll drag our feet on this and give it single readings. That way people can have a chance to call us and the IGA, the stores, and tell us what they think. Councillor Dindrad?
So maybe since the implementation of this bylaw will be next year, can we add the plastic containers or what's the process? What do we need to wait?
Right now, well, because we have to go through, it has to be referred to the province, and the minister has to give approval to it, and that can take some time. And I believe, Silas, you mentioned they're looking at making some amendments at provincial level.
they might make amendments. Not that I'm aware of, but just the timing would be it could be wise to get it to third reading sooner rather than later, because it takes a minimum of 3 months for ministerial approval. And at the end of the summer, they've announced that at the end of the summer, there'll be a whole new process to do this. So that's why the recommendation is that any council that already has one in process, like Gibsons does, to get it done so it can be sent off to the minister. And
we'll give it a second reading now, and then we'll come back to third reading at the next meeting, and then we'll submit it to the minister. So 2 weeks away.
Okay.
Just for people to comment. Okay. Councillor Ludwig?
So again, I don't want to derail it either, but are we going to have some kind of communication about this out to the community? Like, we don't want businesses feeling like they're going to get fined because they missed
and then it's a year away from actual implementation by us, so that once we get the ministerial approval, then we will go through that whole process of the adoption, final adoption, and then further publicity to the community. It's already been there once, and it's going to be there now a couple more times, and then we'll go through it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's important. Yeah. Councillor Dindrad?
Sorry, maybe I still don't understand. If we want to include, for example, the plastic containers, so why don't we do now and we send to the minister? Because what I don't understand is if we send to the minister and then if we want to insert, do we have to send to the minister again?
No, we just amend our bylaw at that time. But what plastic containers are we referring to? Which one?
Restaurants, because a lot of the restaurants already changed to paper. I don't know, we went through this discussion at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps Councillor Lumley can, even because he delivers, I don't know what he's using, but I know certain restaurants are not using no longer, but I don't know depending on the food.
Yeah.
But I think the plastic container, it's huge because you have one meal and you have and depending what you order, it can be 5 containers and that's going to waste.
Yeah.
And depending on the food can be grease, it's even hard to process. So I don't know.
Is there a specific restaurant reference you can give? All the ones I've taken out have been recyclable containers.
Oh, there is one, but I don't want to talk.
Yeah. Councillor Lumley?
We use the utensils we have are wood.
Yeah.
And we use paper and recyclables.
Yeah.
But I know of, maybe you're thinking of the same restaurant I'm thinking of. Are those plastics, are those plastics not recyclable? Because I take them to the hard plastic bin at the Gibsons recyclable. So, and I take the styrofoam there as well. So I don't know. You'd have to probably know the specifics of a plastic container to determine if it's recyclable or not, wouldn't you? Like you can't, I don't know if you can just say plastic containers, right? I don't know. But I think I know what you're talking about, but I just don't think we have enough information to just add it to the bylaw now.
Yeah.
But like we could amend the bylaw in the future, right? So.
Add it at second reading, add it next meeting if we need to. Mr. White?
I will just add that council had this discussion back when first reading happened and passed a motion actually contemplating this, that this bylaw would be reviewed every fall to consider adding things. So you already passed that motion. So that would mean in September, October of this year, even though the bylaw isn't actually, maybe you wouldn't do it this year because the bylaw isn't in effect yet, but that is the process where the bylaw would be reviewed to add items.
And we look at other things too, yeah, okay. Councillor Ledwidge?
Is it possible to put that in the bylaw saying that it'll be reviewed is that something annually?
So we don't forget.
Yeah, basically.
It is on the record already.
Haven't we've already passed the bylaw, have we not?
We're getting it first reading.
Yeah. Well, it's going to come back in the next council meeting. Why don't we,
yeah,
put our heads together before then?
Yeah, every time we look at these things, we can improve them, we can change them, we can.
Or we could just keep talking about it for the next hour.
That's right. So, yeah, I agree. Let's take a look at it. If you want to come back and we'll add something, which just means that we would have to rescind second reading, amend it, and go again. How we can do that? Okay, I've got Councilor Kroll, then Mr. Newman.
I was just going to say very quickly that if we get this through, it can be amended once it's approved. Absolutely. And I think most of the people in the community, once they see this coming forward, are going to say, what's next? Let's look at for alternatives before we even have to put it in the bylaw.
I think people are going to say trees, bird feeders, plastic straws, what's next? That's what they're going to say. Okay, we voted on that amendment, and then the bylaw is amended. Rebecca, have we done the voting on that? Okay. Just to be safe, all in favor? Thank you. We're in favor.
You can't make a bird feeder out of plastic straws now.
Sorry, I was talking to you, but you couldn't hear me. So thank you for taking the vote.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we've got a series of bylaws, and go to the Director of Finance to introduce these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm pleased to present the 5-year financial plan and the associated tax bylaws for council, and these are being presented for 3 readings tonight. And so these bylaws are the result of the budgeting process that began last fall with Council's strategic plan review, along with a community survey, 6 committee meetings, and a budget consultation. And that ended with a final budget presentation to the community that was held on April 13th, just last week. And so Bylaw 1289 is the first one. It's the 5-year financial plan bylaw. It covers all the aspects of the town operations and capital projects. It rolls all the numbers up into one spot. This reflects also the recently approved 7% tax increase for 2021. And as you're aware, the bulk of that increase, so 5% of that increase is relating to the RCMP, and it specifically begins to address the financial challenge that the town's going to face with the funding future policing costs. And that's again, once we reach this magic 5,000 population mark, and that's determined by the federal census, which is going to be underway this summer. The bylaw also reflects Council's commitment to annually reviewing the tax distribution by property class, and this is comparing what commercial properties pay as a comparison to residential. And Council confirmed with a reduction to the business tax multiple to 2.75, and that keeps it consistent with what it was last year. So it took a reduction, but it keeps it consistent with last year. So it's showing your commitment to that. The 2021 capital plan is also reflected in this bylaw, and that includes total projects of about $6.1 million. And of note this year, 1.78 million of that is fully funded by grants. And the significant projects in the financial plan this year are the White Tower Park stormwater expansion, the bicycle and pedestrian network links. Those are the 2 large grant projects. And also you're familiar with the Gibsons Way connector, which is underway. The next bylaw is 1290, and this represents the annual tax rates for 2021. And this is required in order to collect the revenue that's required to fund the town services. We also include the regional district and the regional hospital district rates in this bylaw as well. 1291 relates to the regional district as well, and it provides authorization to collect the community recreation facilities parcel tax, and which is what we forwarded to the SCRD. We of course also forward the regional district and hospital services taxes that we collect on their behalf. Bylaws 1292 and 93, the last 2, and they provide the authorization to collect the water and sewer parcel taxes. And if you remember, Council authorized a 5% increase over last year's rates, and that's supported by the long-term financial plan for both of the utilities. And so the bylaws are being presented tonight for 3 readings, with final adoption scheduled for May the 4th. And this will enable the town to meet the legislative requirements of having these adopted by May 15th. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilor, do you have any questions on any of those bylaws? Director of Finance, have you seen them all? So let's start then with the 2021-2025 financial plan bylaw 1289, 2021. Recommendation be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor Crowell, Councilor D'Andrade, all in favor? Thank you. The tax rate bylaw 1290, 2021 be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor D'Andrade, Councilor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you. The community recreation facility tax bylaw 1291 be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor Crowell, Councilor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Parcel tax bylaw number 1292, 2021 be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor Ladwig, I know you want to get on the record here. Thank you. Councilor Lumley, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And the water parcel tax 1293, 2021 be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor Crowell, Councilor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Those are approved. We'll see them at the next meeting, after which I'm sure our Director of Finance will breathe a big sigh of relief, get them off to the province and take some time off, I hope. That'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wildlife Attractive Bylaw 1294. Council, you saw this earlier on this afternoon. So a recommendation would be given first reading. Councilor D'Andrade, thank you. Councilor Ladwig, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Garbage collection and disposal amendment bylaw 125204 for wildlife, and that recommendation will be given first reading. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diandrad, all in favor? Thank you. And finally, the bylaw enforcement notice amendment bylaw 112512 for wildlife, that will be given first reading. Councillor Lumley said that was a hand up, yeah. And Councillor Kroll, all in favor? Thank you very much. Woo, what a list, eh? But good. I mean, and I really look forward to the feedback from the community on those bylaws, because I think that's the important part of moving forward on them, so that we'll work with our manager of communications and ensure that something gets out there, and also needs to be done in a timely way, because the bears are active and we may want to make sure that they are not shot. Okay, unfinished business. I see none. New business, none. Notice of motions, none. We'll go to inquiries now, and these are the inquiries related to the anything, actually. So we'll go 10 minutes, and I've got 8:37 on my clock.
Anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I see no questions, Mayor Beamish.
Thank you very much. That's an unusual night. So I appreciate that. And we will then go to a motion to close. Before that, I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight, everybody for sitting in with us and sharing this last 2 hours, and good conversations all. And Mr. White, thank you for your assistance with this process. And I should mention that in the grant application that Mr. White has done for us in this process, that we did get funding from the Community Foundation for his time, so that we appreciate that, so that we have not incurred additional budget costs on that. We are actually hoping to have some additional funds through that process. So thank you, Silas. So I'd like a motion to close this meeting in accordance with section 91G1K of the Community Charter. And it was a part of the council closed to the matter considered as one of the following: litigation, potential litigation, receipt of advice, negotiations relating to discussions in their preliminary stages. A motion to that, please. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Lumley, all in favor? Thank you very much. Evie, this is where we say goodbye. I did check, though, the intergovernmental is on Tuesday, May 11th at 6 p.m. And there will be a notice come out on that and a link to that. So Tuesday, May 11th at 6 p.m. for the intergovernmental. And this time it's being hosted by School District 86. Okay, so we will just take a short break in our discussion and say goodnight, Evie, and all the rest of you, and we'll see you later. Good to see you. Ooh. My legs cramp up sitting here this long. But I have old legs, just like Mr. Kroll.